It's kind of late, but let us record a bit. So over the weekend, there are a couple of thoughts been through my mind. One of the open source versus closed source, if you will, like proprietary kind of LLM or agentic frameworks, like those products from, especially from like OpenAI, Anthropic, in the West, in the US in general, the same kind, right? The open source, another name would be the China approach, right? Like DeepSeek, Qwen, GLM, I think is from ZAI, the new brand, right? And Moonshot, Minimax, so on and so forth, right? So yeah, they obviously have their regulatory framework, market conditions, if you will, the whole ecosystem based on which each make the best decision, right? But think about it, the long term though, you have to make money, right? You cannot just produce the product, throw in a lot of workforce and money, right? Billions, right, into it, and you don't really get returns, no revenue. It's hard to sustain, right? So this is a question slightly beyond the nitty-gritty details in who is good, who is bad, like both good and bad in their own terms, right? But for the consumer, obviously, typical consumer, like individual side, like consuming side, consuming consumer, such a word. Obviously, open source is better, but again, but for the business, or if you like to have a fintech or some sort of startup, you obviously are going to embrace the open source as well, right? But again, the downside, the open source is that you might have limited funding, right? If they offer something for free, then somebody has to pay the bill, right? How do they make money is a question, right? Purely from a academia kind of ideological thing, open source is absolutely the good thing to go, right? Like Meta Professor Yang Qwen, respectful, right, for that, and been leading that and do the foundation model stuff, right? And later on being Mistral, right? I'm not sure what is his new venture. I think he's going to start up something, maybe on the French side, guess, right? Europe. Mistral is doing well. It's open source. There's some other open sources, like small ones, right? But in terms of gaining the market share, I think DeepSeek and Qwen, not yet being banned, I would say that, by the US, and according to some statistics, about 70 or even more percent of the new startups and labs and universities, right, businesses, even including some the banks, right, embracing the Qwen and DeepSeek for a good reason, right? You know, number one, they're free, right? Cost is a fraction of what you if you were go with OpenAI, like Anthropic or any other closed source models, right, out there. I think Meta is busy putting up their own multimodal, like, avocado, Mongo, right? And they have the acquisition of miners. They're going to build up their agentic arms, right? So, but really, how, if I'm a bank, right, how I'm going to embrace Meta, Open AI, or Anthropic? The use cases are very limited, right? I might use them to a bit of, do a presentation, right? Maybe do a bit of coding, improve some sort of efficiency. But in the back of my mind, it's like, cost is one thing, but are they really like secure about the data privacy? They're not going to use my stuff. Obviously there are different options to deploy them. You can, for example, like Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, I forgot it by they download the whole OpenAI binary and they build around it, do fine tuning and stuff, right? Will that solve the problem? If you heard the term differential privacy, meaning they can still use your data to train their model, right? What if they release 3 months later? What are you going to do? You retrain everything? The fine-tuning part is not the best strategy, right? So I'm just thinking through, right? It's not right or wrong. I believe I have done substantial research, and I'm, if I were sitting with executive from a bank, right? How would I advise them, strategically on the high level, which way to go, open source, proprietary, like the OpenAI, Anthropic, right? That is one. The other is that the privacy, security, right? How do you solve that? And third, obviously, the regulatory, right? Any other risks you have to take care of, right? So the sustainability, right? Is it sustainable to have a expensive model like OpenAI? You build it, you do fine tuning. 3 months later, you have to redo it, right? How much money do you have really just to catch up with that, right? And isn't that a disruption to your business continuing, right? How do you really run that, operationalize it in a way that, you're not a technology company per se, right? Although it's going to be arguable, right? And maybe a decade ago, some of the banking executives were like, oh, we're a technology company, a patent to be do banking. I don't believe that's true. That didn't hold at least. You are a banking company, right? So financial service, you have to develop product services. You're not a technology company, right? You're not really strong in that, right? I mean, you could try, but you'll fail. But you might get the best advice from McKinsey or BCG or some others, right? But they come and go, right? They're not there to pay the bills, right? You are, you'll be held accountable, right, for whatever decisions you're making. This is where we need to really do our research and think through and deliberate through, like make a disposition which way we go, right? I mean, nothing is like for really like forever, right? You could change, you can revise, you could adapt, right? But essentially, right, you might have a mixed kind of strategy, right? Closed source maybe for coding better, right? But equally, like the open source GLM from I think it's ZAI. It's pretty good. It's probably even better, right, in some aspects, right? At least if you build it, if you embrace it and deploy that into your infrastructure, your application landscape, that's yours, right? There's no concerns of privacy, but you can totally, rebuild it as if, it's part of your fabric, right? But if you use Anthropic through API, it's questionable, right? You're still sending data outside, right? You might have all those security provisions, have secured internals, network, everything, while everything is good, right? Security, you might you might able to onboard them, but again, they are evolving. Right? So as of like 2026, it's been like half a decade, half a century that we've been doing this business. Right? We know what the vendors is going to do, right? A lot of security concerns with it, right? It's going to be a shared security model for sure, right? But are they mature enough? Is the AI been, trustworthy, like sufficiently trustworthy? Do we know how to govern that? Do we know how to enforce whatever regulatory and compliance and security measures? I mean, do these measures exist today? We're developing them, right? Then, so it is really questionable, right? How much, what is the scope? How, you want really blind OpenAI or Anthropic as models, right? Oh, any other, right? Some other proprietary models. There are many of them, right? For now, I would say that probably it's a safer bet going with open source, right? The caveat is obviously it could be some certainly, US could ban JLM, for example. It's still on the table, right? To say, oh, Qwen is not good, right? For whatever reason, right? It's not getting to law. That's not our concern. We are just make sure that it's safe. We can mitigate the risks and anticipate that. Put a sound strategy for us to continue our business. That's really our concern. Right? But if you're a fintech, right? I mean, obviously, open source is the best way. But again, there you don't try not to compete with, building another agentic framework. Yes, you can, it's minus, right? And many others launching have the framework as well, right? Or you try to build the private LLM. Yes, you can, obviously. Probably there's also a sound strategy. But again, try to reuse as much as possible. Think through, right, what this AI and agentic frameworks and even robotics are really for you. Right? It's not your domain, right? It's not your strengths. It's not their business, really. You need to be positioning yourself correctly. You are just a user, if you will, a consumer, a partner maybe in some way, right? Strategically evolve or core innovate. It's fine. In that case, why don't you just delegate to a smaller fintech vendor? Right? You can invest a bit, you can control, right? You can make sure that they're gonna be accountable, right? Right. So, but in any case, the infrastructure, the ecosystem is always many vendors and working together, right? It's not new at all, right? So towards that end, right? Let's this is just a starting point. We're gonna keep coming back for this for sure. Right? In the meantime, let's see what the the community, what the experts really advising us to go with, right? So we're gonna go through some sources and see whether they're making sense or not, right? For each void, you have a link you can follow through, right? It's not like I gave you advice, just invite you to join me and think through what decision you should be making and how you're going to be making it, right? Those are critical. So we take a look at the open source ecosystem, right? What are the leading large language models, right? What are the agentic AI framework? And then robotics side, eventually we're going to have to be arriving on that platform, right? Then we put in the context of strategic decision making and regulatory controls, right? So now DeepSeek, right? And looks like they are doing good, and it's in China, right? You could build a local deployment easily, right? You go to Hugging Face, you go to GitHub, or you go to, if you're using AWS, right? You could easily, just hook up. If that's what you've been building your applications on, it's already pre-linked, if you will, right? Integrated. But if you're doing some sort of a small project, you could download it and use it, right? So same thing with Qwen, right? The Qwen, I believe some of the business, the financial firms, they've already been using it, the legal firms as well, right? They have really sophisticated models, like 235 billion tokens, right? The parameters are not tokens, the MOE, a mixed expert kind of a model, right? They really high perform, multilingual, long context. You could do coding as well. Right? It's Apache license, it's fairly, open, right? And now, like on the open source side, I would still really have my faith in DeepSeek in terms of innovation, right? They're really low cost. They have a lot of, innovation there. The reason is particularly strong, and I anticipate, right, maybe 2026 it could come out with this price around in a month or two, right? Kind of, if you're watching, if you have time, if you pay attention, you can see that, right? That sparse attention, that multiple connection, right? It's really like, breakthrough in a way, right? It's really, it's we substantive innovations beyond what the proprietary large language that can really catch up. Because if you close, you don't have the advantage of inviting so many researchers in, right? Because you're closed, right? You're not allowed people to be part of your conversation, right? But if this is not the best, then obviously there are Llama, right? Llama 4. But given the departure of Professor Young LeCun, I don't know, it continue to be good. So that's why probably you could simplify that. So if you go for the US, it'd be closed source. If you go to open source, you look to China models, right? Like the difference between Qwen and DeepSeek probably more innovative, right? They have, really talented people, researchers like the CEO of DeepSeek, Liang Wenfeng, is coding. The guy is maybe a billionaire. I don't know how many billions, right? Maybe 10, 20, 100, but he's still coding. He's, that's where you could really motivate the team, right? You are in the battleground, right? In the battlefield, right? You know what's going on, really. Each idea, whether it's worthy pursuit. You try it a few times. Half successfully fail, right? It's fine, right? But that's where innovation is from. Not you suddenly had a dream and you know everything. That's just bullshit, right? Okay, now there are some caveat from DeepSeek, right? Qwen, obviously, like they have deeper pocket, right? Alibaba is behind, right? Obviously, you can throw in a lot of money and big teams, and they have arms of marketing and sales. They are doing many stuff, right? A safer bet probably if you embrace it into a more regulated environment like banking. But those are two contenders, right? If you look at Meta, I don't know how long they can really, Mark Zuckerberg is obviously pivoting, trending, right? I don't know if it is still a favorite, the Alexander Wang, of the new, leader there for the lab, right? Super intelligence. I believe not, right? Probably not. But there are some special as I said, Z AI like JLM. Now it's 4.7, I believe, right? It's pretty good. I mean, comparable to the coding capability, Anthropic or OpenAI. They're a top, right? But this JLM probably even better in a way, right? So, but a fraction of the cost, maybe 10% or less, right? I don't know what is the how big is the fraction is, but very small, right? But also you could really adapt and use it as it is yours, right? But there's some other like Minimax, right? Moonshot and some Mistral. Mistral is coming out strong lately, right? You could get into that, right? But I would say that if you want decoding, the DLM probably the way to go. But if you want to general multimodal, probably Qwen models, right? If you want strong, like you want really a long-term evolving the LLM, like you have a lot of OCR, and reasoning, deep in the logic, regulatory compliance side is your, like it's not like you want to use AI, you have to use it, right? Because they're too much, right? For any human beings to even monitoring that billions of transactions, so many documents, it's kind of not quite possible, right? Given the people who are willing to commit fraud or doing the other, give you risks, they are using AI, by the way. So what are you going to do? They're coming by a high-speed train. You want to ride a bicycle to catch up? No, you have to use the AI, right? You have to. You may not use AI to open a new channel, right? You could, but lesser urgency is not imminent. Yeah, you could improve a bit of efficiency, cutting a bit of cost. Any AI models could do that for you. But if you want really be sophisticated and have a long term, I would say DeepSeek is probably the one to go, right? Now, let's look at the other things, right? So LLM is more like a brain, right, if you will. But you need arms and to do stuff. Right? That's where the agentic framework give you that, right? Now, miners is acquired by the Meta, right? OpenAI have their own agentic framework. So is AWS. Elon Musk quick to go there. His robotic side, his FSD, like the Tesla, right? They have plenty of data, real world data to train that, but they are more in the robotic side beyond a simple agent, right? We're going to look at the robotics, humanoid robotics later on. But, Now, so LangChain is probably a safe bet, right? LangGraph, right? Some semantic kernels, right? But for this, before we proceed a lot, I think you need to look at it is old-fashioned, old school, like Palantir, right? I think Peter Thiel, I was reading his book, like 0 to 1 something. I haven't finished, right? So it's a good book. But it's simply slightly outdated, or his mind is got into something that deep, but he forgot the bigger, broader view. His opinion could be biased, right? But he's an excellent guy, right? Very intelligent, deep insights, right? But by that, what I mean, you take a reference in the kind of idea, like ontology. I'm going to talk a lot on that, right? But really, I mean, if you try to use their forward deployed engineering model, you're going nowhere. Right? That's my quick judgment. They're more like a era of the ERP. Think about it. They have started 20 years ago. Right? They have invested heavily. They're more like a data company. Right? They're willing to roll out the sleeves and do the dirty work. Right? They don't just talk. Right? That's what I appreciate. If you want to learn, you need to learn math. Right? Not just, oh, I have ontology to power my agentic AI. Well, that's fine. I mean, how long is it take to build up your ontology, right? If you eventually going to build up one. I mean, I tried. I've been doing that a lot, right? But it's not an easy thing to do, right? It's a lot of smoke out of the guns, right? And the risks. People have different opinions, but you're going nowhere. But really, like I'm going to come down to that later on, right? So, but think of that, right? Maybe like you should have your data transformation ready. You have your data lineup, with engineering. Like the reason, like Mark Zuckerberg got Alexander Wang because he labeling this data engineering, like cleansing stuff, right? Like refinement kind of factory, right, for the data. That's required, right? For the bank, for the government, or for any large business. That's an essential thing. It's like a foundation, if you will, right? A lot of autogen, try to, do something, right? You could use a lot of different frameworks. That's maybe mentioned. I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but let's come back to that, right? So region specific, iFly Tech is a good choice, right? If you are smaller, like maybe using 1,000 employee, you could use their fly nodes or something to manage your daily operations, right? It could handle that, right? Alibaba obviously have their agentic framework, right? Yuntu is from the WeChat person, right? There are many others, right, in the West as well, as I mentioned. We're fucking open source, right? So really, that's agentic AI framework, as I mentioned. Like in order to make it work, you might need something like to line up your data, build up the strong foundation, right? But if you try to learn, oh, I'm gonna copy Palantir, I guess not. Right? They're more like the old-fashioned way, and you're not able to match up with what they have been through. They're majorly a down-to-earth company that has a lot of skills and talents, muscles, right? Financially, technologically, they're committed to the real work, right? And unless you're really that committed, they're not going to match. Not going to. You have to invest quite a lot. In any case, let me close this one. So robotics, we're going to talk a bit on that, but is that really doing it? Think about that. I think you do, right? The future is really the workforce could be human and robots. It can be hardware, like humanoid robot can be like 4 legs or 2 legs, 1 arm, right? Could be just a soft robot, like a sort of assistant you can talk to. I believe each and every one you call it robot, agent, agentic, whatever entity. That's what it is, right? You have to evolve. You cannot say, well, today we're humans. We're going to have humanoid robot. But you don't have to, right? Why do you? Unless you have that need, you don't have to do that. Right? You could have a soft version of just as if you're assistant, right? To help you to read PDF, for example, or help you to read whatever the new latest regulatory controls, right? To sifting through your data piles and see which part the quality is bad. You need to know that or monitor the operations, right? Some other incidents it need to be addressed. Or data loss it could be a triggering alarm. That's where you can deploy some really like robotic agents or AI agent, whatever you call it. It's very little robots, right? They're living there. Thinking about it, you can send a little nano robot into your heart to unblock that little bit of tiny events, right? I don't know the proper word, but you could do this same thing in operations if you're running a law firm, doing a bit of some banking or financial investment, or whatever other factor, the healthcare. Make sure that patients will get what they need, could individualize their treatment and to the instead of weeks, you could have a daily check, right, and monitor them, make sure they are good, right, and especially on the surgery part, you need up to the second or millisecond precision, right, and have to really efficient. Right? That's where the robotic capacity can help you a lot, right? Now we're looking at open source. Again, there are Tesla, not open source, right? It's the Boston Dynamics, right? Atlas. We'll get into the unitary figure AI, right? In terms of the industrial logistics, right? We have agility, they have did it, right? Apollo, Sanctuary AI, Phoenix, right? The hardware stack is even more NVIDIA, unitary textile sensors, skins. And there are many others. I just grabbed a few just to illustrate the point, right? Those are the real future, right? AI agent, whatever you call it, is the more of a intermediary thing, right? Later on, I believe it will go, okay? But it's a foundation. It's different, depends on how you're going to look at them, right? Yeah, this is more of a landscape. Let's pause a bit and listen to the experts who are actually talking about it, right? I mean, talking about AI, we have to use AI. Right? I have two assistants, if you will, right? One of them is the male one, is called Max Fit, right? It's more of the banking executive side, right? Who understand the business quite in depth, right? Being an executive for many years, right? He's also very knowledgeable. He advocate for the AI thing, right? Robotics for the banking side, right? The other is Borosa, who is more from the consulting and technology side, who are with the customer day in, day out, right? They understand the pains, of the consumers, the business, right? He's been through a lot of engagement, could give you excellent advice, right? So let's listen to them for now, right? And see. We could, in the meantime, browse through some other stuff and see if it clicks, right? Okay, let's get started, right? Again, you have to get used to listen to me, not only just listening, but really debating with me, right? Join me in the thinking process, but you still need to make a decision, right? I'm not trying to feed you, influence you anyway. You need to make your own decisions, right? But also listening to other experts, what they are saying. So let's get started.
Where we take your source material, your dense research, your white papers, your transcripts, and turn it into actionable, enjoyable knowledge.
Today's mission is, well, it's focused on a monumental shift in the AI landscape. We're really seeing the market move away from those huge proprietary black box models.
The ones that cost a fortune and you have no idea what's inside them.
Exactly. And it's moving towards systems that are open, hyper-efficient, and, actually designed for real-world deployment. So today we're going to unpack how these breakthroughs in AI efficiency, mostly from models like DeepSeek and Qwen, are fueling the rise of autonomous agents.
And then taking it a step further into the physical world.
That's right. Accelerating the global race for the ultimate physical form, the humanoid robot.
So you've got a three-way convergence here: the brain, the nervous system, and the body. And I think the core tension we see running through all these documents is this: how can an organization, especially one in a regulated industry that needs local control,
like finance or healthcare.
Exactly. How can they get access to true frontier level AI performance without being forced into these closed, incredibly extensive solutions, especially when geopolitics are making that choice really complicated?
It's the ultimate trade-off right now, isn't it? You're balancing performance against cost, control, and of course, compliance. But that trade-off is dissolving fast, and that's what makes this deep dive so timely.
Okay, so let's start with the money, the cost narrative. That seems to be the shockwave that reset the entire industry benchmark. The sources are all pointing to the DeepSeek V3 training cost.
Right. They achieved a frontier level model for roughly $5.5 million.
Just 5.5 million.
I mean, that figure isn't just staggering, it's revolutionary. You compare it to the reported $100 million or more spent by competitors on older flagship models.
It's a rounding error at that point.
It is. DeepSeek basically proved that the barrier to entry for frontier AI has just collapsed by, 95%? The insight here isn't just the number, it's the fact that this kind of innovation is now accessible to almost anyone with a decent budget and a great idea.
So if the economics are that radically different, how did they pull off this kind of efficiency magic trick? It has to be more than just cheaper chips.
Oh, absolutely. It's all about compounding technical innovations in their V3.2 architecture. The big one was relying heavily on a mixture of experts architecture.
Mo, right?
So the DeepSeek model has this massive 671 billion total parameter count, which gives it huge cognitive capacity.
Okay.
But, and this is the key, only about 37 billion of those parameters are active for any single query. That's a nearly 95% reduction in active parameters.
So it's a massive brain, but for most tasks, it only wakes up the specific parts it actually needs. That keeps the lights on without, powering the entire data center.
Precisely. That drastically lowers the inference cost, which is the real ongoing business expense. Then they solve the long context problem with something called DeepSeek Sparse Attention, or DSA.
And what does that do?
Well, standard attention gets incredibly slow and expensive when you push the context window out past, say, 100,000 tokens. But DSA uses a learned sparsity pattern to cut that complexity by 70%.
So their massive 128,000 token context window goes from being a cool but expensive novelty to a practical, affordable feature for businesses.
Exactly. It's what makes it enterprise ready. And they also got innovative on the training side. You mentioned the hardware. They used FP8 mixed precision.
Right.
Training a model this big with FP8 roughly halves the memory bandwidth needed compared to BF16.
Yep.
That gives you 2 to 3 times the throughput on modern GPUs.
Which means faster iteration and lower training costs. It all connects.
It all connects. And don't forget their auxiliary loss-free load balancing. It's a subtle thing, but it makes sure all those experts in the MOE are used efficiently without hurting the model's quality. It solves a huge headache for engineers.
Okay, so it sounds like DeepSeek should be dominating. But then you have Qwen also pushing the envelope, but maybe more on the globalization challenge. What edge does Qwen bring to the table?
Qwen is built for scale and, crucially, for multilingual capability. It's positioned perfectly for the global market. Their Qwen 3235B model is enormous, also has a 128K token context window. But its real advantage, the thing that makes it essential for a global enterprise,
is the languages.
It's the languages. It supports an industry-leading 119 different languages.
Wow. Okay, so if you had to compare the two giants of the open weight world, DeepSeek versus Qwen, what's the general consensus for someone trying to make a choice?
The general feeling is that Qwen is a better, more balanced generalist model.
Yeah.
It has superior generalization across a wide variety of tasks. DeepSeek, on the other hand, especially its R1 reasoning optimized model, really excels in those reasoning-heavy applications. Think advanced math, complex coding problems.
So the big takeaway here is that no matter your business niche, there's now a high-performance, low-cost, open-weight option for you.
That's the new reality.
That technical story is fantastic, but all that incredible engineering runs straight into a legal tripwire, doesn't it? When we talk about these models, what does open actually mean to a compliance officer? Because it's clearly not just one thing.
That's probably the most important question in all of this. It's a spectrum. And if you don't understand the license, you could face massive legal liability.
Okay, so break it down for us.
At the most permissive end, you have true open source. The code, the weights, it's all public and free for commercial use. Think Apache 2.0, which is what Mixtral or Grok 1 use.
And then we move into the gray area.
Yep. Next, you have open weights. The model's brain, the weights are public, but they're governed by a custom and sometimes pretty restrictive license. The Llama Community License is a good example.
And the most restrictive.
That would be source available. These models might be public for research, but they have major commercial restrictions. A model like Command R plus Blana, its default license, requires you to get a separate commercial agreement with the vendor, Cohere, if you want to actually make money with it.
Which brings us to the elephant in the room, the geopolitical risk with DeepSeek. The efficiency is massive, but the regulatory headwinds in the US are intense. If it's so cheap and so good, why isn't everyone switching over?
Because performance doesn't trump compliance, not in the real world. The political reality is hitting hard. We're seeing specific actions being taken. Multiple U.S. federal agencies, Commerce, the Navy, and several states, like New York and Virginia, have already banned DeepSeek on government devices.
And what's the specific concern driving that?
Well, the concern, and we're just impartially reporting what's in the sources here, stems from national security and privacy issues. Because the data collected gets stored on servers in China, it is potentially exposed to government surveillance under their domestic data laws.
And this isn't just about internal government policy, right? It connects to actual U.S. law.
Exactly. You're talking about the U.S. Department of Justice's new U.S. data regulation, which is slated for April 2025. That rule could restrict data transactions with Chinese companies if they involve U.S. personal data.
So a U.S. company using DeepSeek for something that seems harmless, like summarizing customer service calls,
could suddenly find itself in violation of federal law if that model processes even one piece of U.S. personal data. It turns an engineering choice into a massive legal liability. Compliance officers just can't risk that.
And that leads to the data transparency issue. When a model's training data is closed, when you can't see it, what does that mean for security?
It means there's no auditability. It's like buying a house, but you're not allowed to inspect the foundation. You just have to blindly trust the vendor.
And the risks there are.
Hidden biases, for one, but also things like data poisoning or tampering, where someone could inject malicious examples into the training data. And because it's a closed data set, no outside security team can trace the source or fix it. For regulated industries, that is a huge, huge deal.
Okay, so let's move from the LLM brain, which we've established can be built affordably, to the nervous system, the agents. This is where that abstract intelligence gets turned into real executable tasks. How are we defining this agentic AI shift?
It's the evolution from just simple conversation to full autonomy. It's the move from an LLM answering a question to an AI actually performing a multi-step workflow.
So it's not just a chatbot anymore.
Not at all. Agentic AI is actively involved in business operations. It's researching a stock, writing and testing code, or maybe even automating an entire multi-department compliance review.
So what's the technical innovation that separates the really good agents from the rest?
We have to look at how they reason. A great example is Minimax M2. It's a powerful MoE model, 230 billion parameters, but only 10 billion active. Their key innovation is something they call interleaved thinking.
Oh, okay, what's that?
So traditional methods use a linear chain of thought. You plan everything out up front. But in a complex workflow, that can lead to what's called state drift if the world changes mid-task.
Right, the plan becomes obsolete.
Exactly. Minimax M2 uses a dynamic iterative loop. Plan, act, astro, reflect. It reasons, it executes a tool like a code interpreter, it reads the result, and then it reasons again based on that new information. That constant adaptation is critical for reliability in complex tasks.
Minimax is going for that mini price max performance angle. What's the real trade-off they're making to hit that low price point?
It's often speed versus depth. Minimax M2 is optimized to be incredibly fast for agentic coding workflows. It runs at about twice the speed of some rivals, but at roughly 8% of the price.
So they're sacrificing some generalist knowledge for specialized, super fast task execution.
They are. They're establishing a whole new baseline for the economics of autonomous development.
Let's talk about where this is being deployed. The banking sector seems to be all in on building the intelligent bank using these agents. Can you give us some concrete examples?
The financial sector is the perfect use case. You've got high transaction volumes and a crushing regulatory load. So for risk management, Ant International deployed its Shield transformer model, and it achieved 95% precision in spotting high-risk transactions. That's a massive gain in fraud detection.
And for payments, are the agents connecting different systems?
Absolutely. Antem's agentic payment solution connects AI agents to all these different alternative payment methods around the world. They're so committed, they're co-developing something called the Agent Payments Protocol, or AP2, with Google.
And in North America, it's all about compliance.
Paramount. Agents can be fine-tuned on a company's internal policies to automate compliance checks in real time. This makes adapting to new KYC or AML rules almost instantaneous.
And what are the frameworks that actually orchestrate this complex multi-step agent dance?
The frameworks are like the operating system. LangChain and its partner LangGraph are probably the most recognized and proven for enterprise use. You also have Crew AI, which strikes a nice balance between simplicity and power.
And we're seeing global competition here too.
Oh, for sure. Major Chinese origin frameworks are emerging fast, like Qwen Agent from Alibaba and Co-Studio from ByteDance. It just shows how mature the global agent ecosystem is becoming.
Okay, so the affordable brain is ready, the nervous system is running agents. Now the intelligence needs a body. The sources all agree. Humanoid robotics is maybe the most significant front in the US-China tech competition right now, the ultimate merger of AI and the physical world.
It's embodied intelligence, and the race is being fueled by these fast, efficient LLMs like DeepSeek that can provide the complex reasoning needed for physical task planning.
So let's compare the key players, starting with Tesla Optimus. What's their strategy?
Tesla's philosophy is all about affordable mass production. Their long-term target price is around $20,000, the price of a modest car. They were aiming to deploy over 1,000 prototypes internally in 2025.
The big focus is the hands, right?
The hands are everything. The anticipated Gen 3 model with 22 degrees of freedom was actually delayed to early 2026. It just highlights how difficult that specialized hardware really is.
And what about unitary robotics? They seem to be pushing that performance to cost ratio even harder than DeepSeek did with LLMs.
Unitary is all about extreme performance at a ridiculously low cost. Their G1 humanoid's base price is around $16,000. And their H1 robot holds a speed record. It can run at 3.3 meters per second.
Wow.
And this focus on accessibility plus major backing from investors like Alibaba, Tencent, and ByteDance helped them become a unicorn back in June of 2025.
We also see players like Fourier Intelligence who come from a medical rehab background. Where are they deploying their first units?
Fourier is already putting their GR1 units into operational training at places like China Construction Bank and testing them in manufacturing plants like SACGM. It shows you how ready these humanoids are for both high-stakes finance and complex industrial logistics.
It's
Let's dive into the financial ecosystem deeper, right? This is probably the first domain that's going to deeply embed the AI or agentic capabilities, right? Because the need, the shared demand is there, right? The next big one that already been there is the legal part, but it's comparably smaller domain, if you will, and it's cross-cutting, and big part of the financial domain will have the legal implications, regulatory and compliance, right? It's another form of a legal thing, right? Oh, it's not purely legal, the risks included, right? A lot of the customer protection, right? Claims and so on and so forth, right? It is legal, right? It's another form of regulations, right? You have to comply with, right? So if you are starting with the financial ecosystem in terms of AI, agentic AI, or even robotics, right? You probably long term you're going to really shine, right? Not only the efficiency part, not only just cutting costs, but you're going to open new revenue way faster than others. It's really a competitive advantage. And if you don't start now, you'll be falling behind, right, without even realizing that. Because unless you participate, be part of it, it's hard for you to really wrap your head around, understand what is going on, let alone make a strategic decision and commit to it. That's just the start, right? You have to really be doing it. As I said, like Palantir, they're doing the dirty work, right? Go to sleep and get into the field and do it, right? If you don't do it, you can dream forever, right? You can complain, you can criticize, you can, try to demonstrate how smart you are, but you will be lagging behind, right? Unfortunately, you're going to lose billions, right? You may risk closing your bank or close your team. You may be good, hey, just go, right? Because not adding value, right? That's what the risk is, whether individually or to the institution, right? But to the industry as a whole, we have to really embrace what the people are up to, right? If the consumers, if other business, if the government, regulators, technology partners, they're all on the AI, and if we're not, then what do you think? Like it's not, it's not even okay, is it? Right? So, but let's look at that specifically, right? While you're listening to Max Fade, and you can call him Mr. Fade. I would like to make it gender neutral, right? And Barossa, they're on the other side is market advising, right? Let's look into that. So you look at the agentic age, right? You have to really see what is going on in the world. On this map, on the left, from the US to Europe, the Middle East, and to the Far East. It's really electrified, everywhere, right? So it's quite especially in the autonomous AI, the payments and geopolitics in play. But again, it's unstoppable, right? So let's look at this, right? How many billions is this? Trillions is this? A lot of opportunity, right? Very simply, you have to understand an anatomy of the agentic system, right? We're going to get into that. No worries there. But for now, we kind of focus on the big picture, the mid tier, if you will, the line chain, line graph, right, auto-gen kind of stuff, right? But without noticing, and if you didn't pay attention, right, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, Citibank, CIBC, HSBC, right? The Visa, Master, and everybody already get out, like PayPal, of course, right? XPay from. But this crypto payment is a huge deal, right? You're gonna see that Middle East, they get into that, have frameworks in Singapore, Hong Kong, Europe, obviously, MiCA, UK, right? We're going to dive in each of those, what the technology like blockchain, smart contract, but essentially AI is a major driver of integrator, if you will, right? Many of these existing systems or rail will be kind of restructured, if you will, reinvented. Okay, look at it, right? Again, it is U.S. versus China, right? We have it's quite a competition there as well, right? Sputnik moment, right? You know that, quoting the USSR previously, right? That moment, generative AI been talked about for a year, since 2023, 2024, and then LLM, then it's to act. You have to take actions, right? It's already proven. You don't have to prove it again, but you need to continue to really deepen that, really make it to produce, to create revenue, right? And there are, we can continue to evolve this, traditional rule-based and generative and agentic, and robotic, whatever, like human-like, interactive. Put it simply, the humans will be working together with the agents, AI agents, or robotic beings, whatever you call it. It's part of the workforce, right? And probably they will be outnumbered soon, and the robotic part beings taking over more. It's not entirely a bad thing, but a lot of risks for sure, right? Regulations, right? How do you make sure that who is actually accountable. Still the humans who are accountable, right? And they may be a partners, like referring to Agentic AI or agent. They may be a partner, maybe work together with you or for you, but eventually you are accountable, right? So be careful with that, right? Don't assume that you can blame the AI, you know. Okay, those are the blueprint, right? What we mean by intelligent bank, right? It is poised to transform the entire banking value chain, right? You're gonna move in beyond fragmented pocket size, the adoptions. You have to be systematic. That's where you need to have a strategy, if you will. I mean, the word is overused, but it's so true, right? You know, doesn't matter it's front office, middle office, risk management, finance, you know, in the field, sales, service, back office, you know, operations, right, loans, a lot, everything. It's no exit, right? Payment especially. The data is quite. You really have to look into that. You know, you don't have to say, oh, I need data to power my AI or AI agent. You could also use the agent to cleanse your data, right? To data engineering. Think about this. Why I'm going to talk really deep to what is the banking side, the sort of AI or robotics kind of ontology, you know, how we're going to do that engineering. That's what Barossa specialist there, right? That's why I invite her into our conversation, right? But again, you look at this, you know, MasterCard, you know, AI payment, Alipay, Visa, well, a lot, right? Blockchain wise, right? And you see, it's fun to make moment, review that efficiency at scale, hardware efficiency, and what is it? Per out of course, right? Risks aside, right? Security, deception, deepfake, a lot, right? Data sovereignty. You heard about it from Barossa, right? If you have one element processed by some other sanctioned AI or AI models, you're really stepping from the engineering side to the legal, right? You'll be fine, right? You'll be scrutinized. You get into trouble, right? You know, this is a trust deficit. There's also some sort of integration we need. We need a better governance model, right? We have to turn the barriers to enablers, right? The regulator is not there just to start the revolution. You have to be part of it, right? You know, this is easy to say, but it's really harder to do. We are living in agentic age. It's not a spectator. We have to be part of it, financially speaking. You have to throw your money, invest in it, right? Otherwise, you'll be left behind. That's what it is. Let's continue the conversation, and we can close it, you know, and dive deeper later on. Right?
Clear that U.S. companies like Agility and Sanctuary are leaning heavily on foundation models, specifically NVIDIA's Isaac GR00T model for reasoning. But the hardware supply chain reveals a potential bottleneck. What's the friction point?
This is the hardware aha moment in the upstream supply chain. The U.S. might dominate the AI brain, but the physical body still relies on a very specialized manufacturing skill set. Two components are crucial: hollow cup motors and frameless torque motors.
Tell us about the hollow cup motors.
They are absolutely essential for those super dexterous robotic hands, like the ones planned for Optimus Gen 3. And right now, Western firms like Maxon and Faulhaber dominate about 88% of that market because of the high technical barriers in precision coil winding.
So this tiny, highly technical supply chain detail reveals that even if U.S. foundation models lead, the physical body still depends on specialized Western manufacturing.
That's exactly right. And frameless torque motors are the second piece. They're used in the joints to provide superior torque at low and medium speeds, which is precisely what humanoid joints need. Whoever can control the manufacturing of these small, high-precision components will have a massive competitive advantage, regardless of who has the best LLM brain.
We have covered a huge amount of ground in this deep dive. The story is clearly one of convergence. These incredible efficiency breakthroughs, like DeepSeek's cost advantage, are fueling complex agentic AI.
Driven by things like Minimax M2's interleaved thinking.
which is finding a home in high-stakes industries like finance and driving the physical manifestation of intelligence in humanoid robots, with Unitree now competing head-to-head with Optimus.
I think the key takeaway for you, the listener, is that the strategic decision is no longer just about raw model performance. It's fundamentally about control, cost, and compliance.
The black box is no longer acceptable.
Exactly. Organizations are now actively prioritizing open-weight models that allow for auditability, fine-tuning on their own private data, and local deployment within secure cloud environments like AWS Bedrock or Azure Foundry. The days of just accepting a black box are over.
Okay, here's the unavoidable conflict in the data we need to talk about before we finish.
We've seen agents automate finance, compliance, engineering. DeepSeek R1 is already showing it can lay out its complex reasoning in these internal think blocks when it solves a problem. As the cost of intelligence plummets and these agents get faster and more integrated into the real world, the critical question becomes, will the speed of AI agent evolution outpace our ability to audit or govern its complex, multi-step thought process before it takes autonomous control of major financial or industrial operations? Something for you to mull over.
Okay. I mean, really, we'll have to close the conversation in an hour, right? We're going to continue. So again, I'm not here to teach you. I don't have the time. I'm not here to, try to influence you to believing what I'm trying to say. I'm really invite you to think together with me, to be part of the AI kind of evolvement, if not revolution, right? So that if you take one thing away from me, that is the message, right? It doesn't matter you are executive, you are senior leader, or some other domains, but it's equally applicable, right? You have to be part of it, right? It's no excuse. Any case, we're gonna continue next time, dive deep in each of the topics we covered, right? And hope you get something from this chat, and we'll continue next time. Okay, to close it up, we're gonna look into the 2026. In the meantime, maybe play some music for you. Just thank you, right? Right. So data algorithms and architecture, some ARAs, model-centric, system-centric integration, right? Like coding part. Are you really able to use that FSD in another show that I tried the FSD, right? I really deeply appreciate how well it worked out, right? And Waymo, right? Engineered system, I think it's more on the China side. Okay, it's humanoid kind of robot. We've been looking at the Unitree, the Boston Dynamics, impressive, right? Tesla, bigger AI, Optimus, right? There's the potential, right? How much what about the crossing the chisel from Eve to how much, right? And here's the killer app, right? Everybody looking for. What is it? It's coding, right? Or is it anything else, right? So, and the IPO, okay, we're gonna come down to some man, and he's kind of OpenAI. The team there is brilliant team, right? We got to look into deeper and what the success and failures, mistakes, and some, internal politics, right? The saga they have seen this time last year, right? It's a lot of things to be to learn from them and to really, and Anthropic. This interesting company, but I will reserve that and for later talks, right? Then three call this kind of thing, right? The battleground, right? You look at the ecosystem, obviously profitability, right? You look at the open source versus closed source, to use a simplified term, and physically you give eyes, it's given an arm. That's why Meta acquisition of miners, right? And everybody's doing that, right? And then it's going to be aggressively hunt of the next layer. What is that? AI model is probably just the tip of the iceberg, right? What about the memory? What about the connectivity, the power infrastructure? We run out of electricity. I will really, we have to manage that, the vertical application later, right? That's the interesting part. We try to dive deeper, right? That's probably the most lucrative part of it, right? So for that, thank you. We're gonna continue next time in an hour. Okay, really appreciate your patience.
对酒当歌，人生几何？譬如朝露去日苦。